Chapter 11: The Americas. The peoples of North America. During the last ice age, a natural land bridge connected the Asian and North American continents. Early hunters used this land bridge when they followed herds of bison and caribou into North America. These hunters became the first people to live in North America. Early hunters-gatherers moved across the Bering Strait into North America, later forming distinct cultures. The first North Americans. The Americans make up an enormous land area, stretching about 9,000 miles, more than 14,000 kilometers from the Arctic Ocean in the north to Cape Horn at the tip of South America. The North American continent is large and has varying climates and geographical features. It has ice-covered lands and hot, dry deserts. Dense forests cover some areas, and fertile river valleys are ideal for hunting and farming. Many years ago, these different geographical areas became home to various people who created their own distinctive ways of living. Between 15,000 and 20,000 years ago, the last ice age caused sea levels to drop. Low sea levels in turn created a land bridge connecting the Asian and North American continents. Many scholars believe that people from Asia used this land bridge to cross the Bering Strait into North America. Most likely, the first Americans were hunters, pursuing herds of bison and caribou. They lived in small nomadic communities. To survive, they needed to remain close to the source of their food supply. Arctic and Northwest, the Inuit. About 3000 BC, the Inuit moved into North America from Asia. They had to learn very specific skills to survive in such a cold and harsh environment. Most Inuits settled along the coast of the tundra region, the treeless land south of the Arctic. Using harpoons and spears made from antler or narwhal thorns, the Inuit were skilled hunters. Seal, caribou, and fish provided both food and clothing. In winter, the Inuit built homes of stones and turf. Traditional igloo was made out of cut blocks of hard-packed snow, was only a temporary shelter used during traveling. Eastern woodlands, mound builders, and Troches. Around 1000 BC, farming villages appeared in the eastern woodlands, the land in eastern North America from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Although people in the eastern woodlands region grew crops, they also continued to gather wild plants for food. One eastern woodlands group was the Hopewell people in the Ohio River Valley. They extended their culture along the Mississippi River. The Hopewell people, known as the Mound Builders, built large, elaborate earth mounds that were used as tombs for ceremonies. Some were built in the shape of animals. The chief to full-time farming about AD 700 led to a prosperous culture in the Mississippi River Valley. This Mississippi culture grew corn, squash, and beans together to provide plants with nutrients, support, and shade. Cities began to appear, some of them containing 10,000 people or more, at the site of Cahockla, near the modern city of St. Louis. Archaeologists found a burial mound over 98 feet high. It had a base larger than that of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. Between AD 850 and 1150, Ahokla flourished and served as the seat of government. For reason unknown, the Hokla collapsed during the 1200s. To the northeast of the Mississippi culture were people known as the Iroquois. The Iroquois lived in the village that consisted of long houses surrounded by wooden fences for protection. Each long house built of wood poles covered with sheets of bark was 150 to 200 feet, 46 to 61 meters in length, and housed about a dozen families. Iroquois men hunted deer, bear, caribou, and small animals like rabbits and beaver. There were also warriors who protected the community. Women owned the dwellings, gathered wild baskets, and took care of the children. Wars were common, especially among groups of Iroquois who live in much present-day Pennsylvania, New York, and parts of southern Canada. Legends hold that sometime during the 1050s, the Iroquois people were nearly torn apart by warfare. An elder one of Iroquois group appeared to preach the need for peace. One who listened was Hiawatha, a member of the Anoda group. From the combined efforts of Beganaweda and Hiawatha came from Great Peace, which centered an alliance of 5 groups called the Iroquois League and Council of Representatives. A group of 50 Iroquois leaders, known as the Grand Council, meet regularly to settle differences. Representatives were chosen in a special way. Each Iroquois group was made up of clans, groups of related families. The women of each clan singled out a well-respected woman as the clan mother. The clan mothers, in turn, chose the male members of the Grand Council. Much was expected of these men: patience and firmness, but also a tenderness for their people and calm deliberation. The Grand Council, an experiment in democracy, brought the Iroquois in a new way to deal with their problems. People of the Great Plains. West of the Mississippi River Basin, the Plain Indians cultivated beans, corn, squash along the river valleys of the eastern Great Plains. Every summer, the men left their villages to hunt buffalo, a very important animal to the plains culture. Hunters would work together to frighten a herd of buffalo, causing them to stop it over a cliff. The buffalo served many uses for plains people. They ate the meat, used the skins for clothing, and made tools from the bones. By stretching buffalo skins over wooded poles, they made circular tents called teepees. Teepees provided excellent shelter. They were warm in winter and cool in summer. People of the Southwest, the Anasazi. The Southwest covers the territory of present-day New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, and the Colorado. Conditions are dry, but there is sufficient rain in some areas for farming. The Anasazi people established an extensive farming society there. Between AD 500 and 1200, the Anasazi used canals and eastern dams to turn parts of the desert into fertile gardens. They were skilled in making baskets and beautifully crafted pottery. They used stone and adobe sun-dried brick to build pueblos, multi-storied structures that housed many people. At Chaco Canyon in northwestern New Mexico, they built an elaborate center for their civilization. At the heart of the Chaco Canyon was Pueblo Bonito. This was a large complex that contained some 800 rooms housing more than 1,000 people. The Pueblo Bonita complex included communal rooms where people assembled to perform religious rituals. This flourishing center could not survive a series of droughts that occurred over a 50-year period. Finally, the Anasazi had to abandon the center. The Anasazi culture itself did not die. To the north, in the southern Colorado, a large community had formed at Mesa Verde. Today, this is a national park in the United States. Groups of Anasazi, they built a remarkable series of buildings in the recesses of the cliff walls. However, Anasazi abandoned the settlement in the late 1200s because of a prolonged drought. Early civilization in Mesoamerica. Archaeology tells us about the ancient society that once existed in Mesoamerica. First came the Olmec, whose culture influenced those that followed. Later, the Maya became one of the most sophisticated cultures of the early Americas. The civilizations that followed, the Toltec and the Aztec, incorporated Maya traditions into their cultures. The Olmec. The Olmec, the first Mesoamerican civilization, appeared around 1200 BC, and the city of Teotihuacan thrived until AD 800. Not until the late 1800s did archaeologists begin excavating ancient ruins found in Mesoamerica. This is a name used for areas of Mexico and Central America where ancient empires flourished. Detailed excavations revealed that the Maya once lived there. Later, excavations told of an even older society, the Olmec. Next, Olmec culture. Archaeologists first discovered the Olmec society in the 1940s. They called these people the Olmec or rubber people because of the rubber trees that grew in the area where they lived. The Olmec, the first known civilization in the Mesoamerica, appeared around 1200 BC. They farmed along river banks in the hot, swampy lowlands along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico south of Veracruz. They traded with other peoples of Mesoamerica for jade and obsidian to make their tools, jewelry, and monuments. Olmec objects have been found in central Mexico. The Olmec had large cities that were centers for the religious rituals. The oldest city was San Lorenzo, which contained pyramids and other stone monuments. In La Venta, a 30-foot high, 9-meter high pyramid towered above the city. Olmec skilled artisans also covered a series of colossal stone heads, probably to represent their gods or rulers. These huge heads, 10 feet 3 meters high and weighing 20 tons, are especially remarkable because the Olmec had no metal tools. Carving them with instruments of stone must have taken a great deal of time. Around 400 BC, for reasons not yet fully understood, the Olmec civilization declined and eventually collapsed. However, some aspect of their tradition influenced later Mesoamerican societies. The Olmec played to a ceremonial game on a stone ball court, a ritual that the Maya people would later practice. The Maya also continued the Olmec fascinations with a jaguar-like gold and adopted the Olmec calendar and numerical system. The city of Teotihuacan. The first major city in Mesoamerica was Teotihuacan, or Place of the Gods. This city was the capital of an early kingdom that arose around 250 BC and collapsed around 800 located about 30 miles, 48 kilometers, northeast of Mexico City in the Fertile Valley. Teotihuacan occupied an area of 8 square miles, 21 square kilometers. It had as many as 200,000 inhabitants at its heart. Along its main thoroughfare, known as the Avenue of the Dead, were temples and palaces. All of them, however, were dominated by a massive pyramid of the sun. This monument rose in the 4 tiers of the height of over 200 feet 60 meters. Most of the people of Teotihuacan were farmers. Fertile soil made them valley one of the richest farming areas in Mesoamerica. Teotihuacan was also a busy center for trade. In scores of workshops throughout the city, skilled artisans made tools, weapons, pottery, and jewelry. Especially famous were their obsidian tools. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, was prized in Mesoamerica. It was used in tools, mirrors, and the knives with razor-sharp blades used in human and animal sacrifices. Archaeologists estimate that there were 400 obsidian workshops in the city. The goods made in Teotihuacan were shipped to Central America, Mexico, and even southwestern North America. In return, the city inhabitants received luxury items and the raw materials, such as shells and bird feathers, used in their crops. Sometime during the 8th century, for a reason yet unknown, the city's power declined. Eventually, the ruling class left the city, and around AD 800, the city was destroyed and abandoned. Far to the east of Teotihuacan, on the Yucatan Peninsula, another major civilization had arisen. This was the civilization of the Maya, which flourished between AD 300 and 900. It was one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the Americas. The Maya built splendid temples and pyramids and developed a complicated calendar as accurate as any existence in the world at that time. The Maya were a farming people who cleared the dense rainforest, developed farming, and centered the culture in the city-states. Maya civilization included much of Central America and southern Mexico. Sometime around 800, the Maya civilization in the central Yucatan Peninsula began to decline. Why did this happen? Explanations include the invasions, internet revolt, or a volcanic eruption. A more recent theory is that overuse of the land led to reduced crop yields. Whatever, in that case, cities like Tikal and Palenque were abandoned and covered by dense jungle growth. They were not rediscovered until the 19th and 20th centuries. Political and social structures. Maya cities were built around a central pyramid topped by a shrine to the gods. Nearby were other temples and palaces and sacred ball court. Some scholars believe that over 100,000 inhabitants may have lived in urban centers, such as Tikal in present-day Guatemala. Maya civilizations were composed of city-states, each governed by hereditary ruling class. These Maya city-states were often at war with each other. Ordinary soldiers who were captured in battle became slaves. Captured nobles and war leaders were used for human sacrifice. Rulers of the Maya city-states claimed to be descended from the gods. The Maya rulers were helped by nobles and a class of scribes who may also have been priests. In addition, Maya society contained peasants and townspeople who worked as skilled artisans, officials, and merchants. Most of the Maya people were peasant farmers. They lived in tiny plots or at terraced hills in the highlands. Houses were built of adobe and thatched. There was a very clear-cut division of labor. Men did the fighting and hunting, women the homemaking and raising of children. Women also made cornmeal, the basic food of much of the population. The Maya also cultivated cacao trees, where were the source of chocolate. Chocolate was used as a beverage by the upper classes. Cacao beans, the fruits of the cacao tree, were used as many in markets throughout the region. Crucial to Maya civilization was its spiritual perspective. For the Maya, all of life was in the hands of divine powers. The name of their supreme god was Etzwamna, or lizard house. Gods were ranked in order of importance. Some, like of the jaguar god of night, were evil rather than good. Like other Asian civilization in Mesoamerica, the Maya practiced human sacrifice as a way to appease the gods. Human sacrifices were also used for special ceremonial occasions. When a male heir was presented to the throne, war captives were tortured and then beheaded. One Maya ruler took his troops into battle to gain prisoners for celebrations honoring his son. Writings and calendar. The Maya created a sophisticated writing system based on hieroglyphs or pictures. Unfortunately, the Spanish conquerors of the 16th century had little respect for the Mayan language and made no effort to decipher it. Instead, the Spaniards assumed the writings were evil of no value, as one Spanish bishop wrote. We found a large number of books in these characters, and they contained nothing which there were not be seen, superstition and lies of the devil. We burned them all, which they regretted to an amazing degree, and which caused them much affliction, according to Bishop Diego de Landa, 16th century. This calendar, in that picture, known as the Long Convent, was based on a belief in a cycle of creation and destruction. According to Maya belief, our present world was created in 3114 BC before Christ and is scheduled to complete its downward cycle on December 23, 2012. The Maya used two different systems for measuring time. One was based on a solar calendar, 365 days divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with an extra 5 days at the end. The other system was based on a secret calendar of 260 days divided into 13 weeks of 20 days. Only trained priests could read and use this calendar to foretell the future and know the events associated with each day. Many Mayan hieroglyphs records important events in Maya history, especially events in the lives of Maya rulers. One of the most important collections of Mayan hieroglyphs is located at a city called Palenque. There, archaeologists discovered a royal tomb covered with hieroglyphs that record the accomplishments of a ruler named Pakal, whose body was buried in the tomb. Rise of the Aztec. According to their legends, when the Aztec arrived in the Valley of Mexico, other people drove them into a snake-infested region. The Aztecs survived, however, strengthened by their belief in the sign that would come from their god of the war and of the sun. Huitzilopochtli, the god, had told them that when they saw an eagle perched on a cactus growing out of a rock, their journey would end. In 1325, under attack by another people, they were driven into swamps and islands of Lake Texcoco. On one island, they saw an eagle standing on a prickly pear cactus on the rock. There they built Tenochtitlan, or a place of prickly pear cactus. Now, we have found the land promised to us. We have found peace for our weary people. Now we want for nothing. For the next 100 years, the Aztec constructed temples, other public buildings, and houses. They built roadways of stone across Lake Texcoco to the north, south, and west, linking the island to the mainland. The Toltec. After the collapse of Teotihuacan, new people rose to the prominence in the central Mexico. Most significant were the Toltec. The Toltec Empire reached its high point between AD 950 and 1150. The center of the empire was at Tola, built on a high ridge about 30 miles 48 kilometers northwest of present-day Mexico City. The Aztec later plundered Tola and destroyed much historical evidence. Therefore, much of what is known about the Toltec comes from legends that later culture told of them. The Toltec comes from legends that later cultures told of them. The Toltec irrigated their fields with water from the Tola River and grew a number of crops including beans, maize, and peppers. This flourishing agriculture enabled Tola to support a population of between 40,000 to 60,000 people. Another 60,000 people live in the surrounding territory. The city itself was between 5 and 6 square miles, 13 to 16 square kilometers. The Toltec were warlike people. Their empire included much of northern and central Mexico. They also extended their conquest into the Maya lands of Guatemala and the northern Yucatan. The Toltec controlled the upper Yucatan Peninsula from Chichen Itza for centuries. The Toltec Empire began to decline around AD 1125 as a result of fighting among different groups in Tola. Around 1170, the city was scared and much of it burned. There was no single ruling group for nearly 200 years. The Aztec Empire then gained control and carried on many Toltec traditions. The origins of the Aztec are uncertain. Sometime during the 12th century AD, they began a long migration that brought them to the Valley of Mexico. They eventually established a capital at Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City. They would rule until the Spanish conquest. And that's all. Thank you.